Hey, what's up guys? My name is Treka and today I'm with Janice Kortkamp. She's an American activist and she's visiting Syria for the 7th time today.
Yay!
How are you doing today, Janice?
I'm doing great, Treka. It's great to be back with you. And, this is always hard because I'm sad about leaving. It's been a great trip.
Yeah, and I heard in your trip you visited many cities.
Yes. I got to go down south for the first time, so I went to Basra and Sweda. Basra was amazing.
Yeah, I've seen the pictures that you posted on your page.
Yeah, really just jaw-dropping, stunning. And around homes there with Safita and that whole area, and then Palmyra again, and spending a lot of time in homes, and here in Damascus. It's been great.
That's amazing. And the last time you visited Syria was last year?
Yeah.
It was last year.
Yeah.
And what are the differences you saw in your last visit and your visit this year in Syria with the people and the situation?
Sure. It's bittersweet because everything is so much safer. And that's wonderful to see. I've seen a lot of rebuilding. For example, I was in the souk or the market area in Homs, and when I first had seen that in 2016, it was empty and everything was damaged and destroyed.
Yeah.
And they've rebuilt a lot of that. It's full of shops now and full of people, so that was great to see. And the hard part is seeing how much suffering the Syrian people are experiencing because of the sanctions and the economic situation. So it's always bittersweet coming here because of the war and everything going on. But still, really, I see a lot of progress.
Yeah, and you said something really important because like in Syria right now, the Syrian people, the majority are very happy that a lot of cities have been liberated this year, a lot of rebuilding, like you said. And the other side of the Syrian citizen is also sad because of the economic sanctions. Because the economic sanctions that have been implemented by the West have hurted the Syrian people in many ways.
So much.
Yeah, it's like the Syrian citizen right now has reached to the point that he's not finding a way out. A Syrian citizen has to work 2 to 3 jobs to just make ends meet. And the economic sanctions, this is the thing about the West. Whenever they implement sanctions on a country, they think that they're punishing the Syrian government.
Right.
But what they don't know is that they are actually hurting the Syrian people more than they are hurting the Syrian government.
Yes.
Yeah, and this can be talked in many different aspects. Whether we're talking about medication, there are people in hospitals that need specific medications, but because of the economic sanctions, we can't import these medications. So people's situation in the hospitals are getting worse. Just today, the Syrian currency, the Syrian pound has flew up to 700.
Yeah, Americans don't really understand what sanctions are about, and this is something that people need to really grasp because they sound like, and they're sold to us as something that doesn't hurt the people, that only attacks the leaders. The leaders here are very clear and honest that it doesn't hurt them.
Yeah.
That it does hurt the people, and yes, the medications are one thing, but take somebody like you, for example. I know a lot of people here who could get work doing translating or other creative things. You cannot possibly do that because you can't have PayPal, you can't have a credit card, you can't have a bank account anymore.
You can't even make money online.
You can't even make money online. And so what happens is Syria can't import or export products. They can't get their economy going that way. They can't get investment. So there's a lot of rebuilding going on, but it's smaller scale projects usually.
True.
But if you want to build a whole new housing complex, a lot of those projects need outside investment. Syria isn't looking for handouts. They want to do business with people, and they simply cannot do that. And if you don't rebuild, if the economy sucks, if people can't find work, guess what? The refugees won't come back.
It's true.
So it would help the European countries, it would help the Americans, it would help the Syrians, it would help everybody if we just ended those stupid sanctions.
It's true. And just like you said, these sanctions are actually useless because the way the West are thinking is that they think if they put more sanctions, then they're gonna pressure the government or they're gonna, whatever. But what they are actually doing is they're pressuring the Syrian people because it's the Syrian people that are suffering. When we don't have fuel to warm up our houses, do you think like Syrian government officials are sitting in their houses without oil to warm their house? No, but the majority of the Syrian people will be the ones suffering, not the people in high-ranking positions.
Of course, and anybody who imposes the sanctions, the people who are really in charge in Washington, they know full well that sanctions only hurt the people. That is the point of them, is to make people so miserable and desperate, they'll do the regime change that we've been trying to do through terrorist proxies, mercenaries, all these other things, that you guys will actually change your mind and rise up against your government, and that's the whole point of them.
Yeah, it's true. But hopefully we hope that the American people and the people in European countries, I hope they all stand together and try to pressure their government to lift those sanctions from Syria, because like we said, it's just making the situation way more worse than it should be.
And I know a lot of people are confused about the war and the reasons and all that. That's fine. That doesn't have to affect anybody here. If you want to help the Syrian people, no matter what your understanding is, you have to understand that ending sanctions will help everybody here, and this is what we need.
As an American citizen that lived in America when the Syrian war started, as an American citizen that also visited Syria 7 times, what are the lies that your mainstream media has been telling the American people about the war in Syria?
Sure. Everything's been a lie. For one, it's been a lie of omission, because they'll only tell one side of the story, number one. But all of the primary narratives that the war started in March 2011, the war started years before that against Syria to undermine the government and this kind of thing. And then, the idea that the government brutally put down peaceful protests. I know people all over Syria, and they'll tell you, yes, there were reform marches and stuff. That's different than people from the beginning wanting religious minorities or ethnic minorities gone or dead, and the violence that came with that. They don't know any of that. They don't know any of the popular support the president has here. They don't know that Syrian people have full open access to the internet, that you all know exactly what everybody else is saying about you.
Yeah.
That they just have no clue about any of the basic foundational stuff.
And many American people, they think that the American government has been sending money and weapons to moderate rebels and freedom fighters. This is one of the main lies that they've been telling the American people. They told them that the Syrian government is killing moderate and freedom fighters, and it's just killing them because they're asking for a new government.
Right.
When in reality, these fighters that the US and NATO countries were funding were actually ISIS and Al-Qaeda. They were Islamic extremist terrorist groups that wanted to overthrow Syria's secular government and implement Sharia law and make us an ignorant country like Saudi Arabia. So this is one of the things that many people in the West, they have no idea of. It's just these couple of years that when things got fully exposed that they started waking up. But we Syrians, 6 years ago, we were telling the people that your government is actually sending weapons to ISIS and Al-Qaeda. But they were brainwashed to believe that they were freedom fighters and moderate rebels.
And as an American, this is one of the things that I want people to understand, is that governments do this kind of nonsense. They always want to invade somewhere or take something that's not theirs. This is what a lot of governments do, aggressive governments. Our government is aggressive. But it's been our media, really, that has been the biggest problem. Because back in 2012, there were plenty of stories from the U.S. Defense Intelligence Agency that described these so-called moderate rebels. And, one story after another, even Foreign Policy had a report saying 2 cheers for Syrian jihadists. They're cutting people's heads off and stuff, but they're good for U.S. interests. This is similar to what we did in Afghanistan, sponsoring the Taliban and Mujahideen there.
Yeah.
So this is something that's a pattern of ours, and people just simply refuse to recognize this pattern, and the media refuses to report on it.
Yeah.
And so I actually put more burden of guilt on them.
Yeah, the mainstream media has played a huge role in spreading lies about the war in Syria. And by the way, not only in Syria, in many did you hear about the fake news that ABC reported about? They said that these are airstrikes and explosions happening in Syria right now, when it turned out to be a Kentucky video of I don't know, like a shooting.
Yeah, it was a shooting demonstration, you know,
Yeah.
People were cheering and everything.
And people were surprised. I told them, believe me, this is not the first time they have done propaganda to create more war and tension in the Middle East.
Of course, and you know, everybody should be able to look to Libya and see what has happened in that poor country.
Yeah.
It was the most prosperous country in North Africa.
Very true.
And now look at it with slave markets in the streets. And you know, if you refuse to look at the consequences of this, like I always tell people, you know, at least 1 million people are dead. Some people say 4 million. Tens of millions displaced, creating a refugee crisis. We've literally been sponsoring Al-Qaeda. We have spent $5.6 trillion on these wars, and the Pentagon has lost track of as much as $21 trillion.
Okay, can I ask you one question? Why is it that America is always interfering in the Middle East? You know, they're everywhere. They're in Syria, they're in Iraq, they're in Afghanistan, they're in Libya. It's like they always want to have their military bases in the Middle East. And this is the American tax dollars. The American people are the ones that are paying for these wars, and they're spending billions and trillions of dollars every year on wars in the Middle East.
Yeah, and sacrificing our sons and daughters who come back, if they come back, committing suicide or with PTSD, drug and alcohol abuse problems. The reason we're here, you know, it's complex because this is the most kind of coveted or wanted region for control. So you have two things. You have the military-industrial complex has to justify its own existence.
Yeah.
And so after the Soviet Union fell, they needed a new enemy in order to increase their budgets. They want to keep Russia and China out of the Middle East. They want to control the petroleum-based economy of the world. It's not for oil for the U.S. It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with controlling the market. And then, of course, you have Israel. And Israel has expansionist ambitions. You know, they want Lebanon, for example. And Syria and Iran and Hezbollah kept Israel from taking over Lebanon. So you have to take away that enemy so that you can expand. And so you've kind of got, and then you've got Saudi Arabia with the Wahhabis always wanting to spread their religious ideology around. And, you know, people like Turkey, countries like Turkey that are, you know, controlled by the Muslim Brotherhood and other sectarian religious-based ideology. So you have all these different factors, and that's why people get confused.
As an American citizen, how did you feel when you heard that Trump wants to pull out all U.S. troops from Syria?
You know, my sister asked me, is this the right thing? I said, yes, we have got to get out of Syria. And then immediately flip-flopped and just relocated the troops to be stealing Syria's oil. And people think, oh, we don't need the oil. It's the same thing. It's not about America stealing the oil for America. It's about keeping Syria from getting access to its own oil. Because
they don't want us to build our economy and use.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But you know, when they're securing this oil and not giving it to the Syrian government, which is the rightful owner of this oil, you know, when they're doing this, they're affecting the people because with this oil, the Syrian government is going to give it to the Syrian people to warm their houses in the winter.
Yes.
So as long as the American military bases are sitting on these oil fields and not giving it to the Syrian people, which are the rightful owners of this property, they're affecting a lot of Syrian people in this winter in many ways that they can't imagine.
So many ways, you know, the heating is huge because there were people that were literally freezing to death last winter, and that could happen again this winter. They can't get to work.
Mhm.
They can't use it for bulldozers
Transportation.
and the big equipment that you need for rebuilding.
Mhm.
And of course, the army can't have access to the oil they need to defeat Al-Qaeda
Yeah, in
in
Idlib.
Idlib.
It's true.
You know, so we're literally working on prohibiting rebuilding, refugees coming back, and prohibiting the defeating of Al-Qaeda. So that is, none of that is in the interest of the American people.
So as an American citizen, you supported the idea of Trump pulling out US troops, but you
Absolutely.
don't support the idea of him keeping troops in Syrian oil fields.
Of course, and we're maintaining a totally illegal occupation. We have no legal foundation for being here whatsoever, and we certainly are not guarding it from ISIS. Syria and its allies are more than capable of guarding their
Yes.
own oil from ISIS.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like it's true. Like the Syrian army can protect itself from ISIS. There is Russia also here, and that's the difference between the Russian intervention here in Syria and the American intervention. The Russian intervention is legal. They were invited by the Syrian government to help out in the fight against ISIS, while the American army just invited themselves inside Syria and they didn't take any. It wasn't legal, you know. Like when Russia wants to attack a specific area in Syria, they coordinate and communicate with the Syrian government. They tell them at this time in this location we're going to bomb. But America does what it wants without coordinating or communicating with the Syrian government. So that's the difference between America's intervention here in Syria and Russia.
And it's very important for people to understand that America was here first.
Yes.
And, you know, against the will of the Syrian people and the Syrian government. Nobody wants us in here militarily. You know, everywhere I go, Syrians always say, we love Americans, we hate your government.
Yeah.
You're most welcome in Syria. You know, goodwill visitors are always welcome here. But illegal aliens, Donald Trump is building a wall to keep Mexicans out of America, but he's the illegal alien in Syria.
He's building a wall to not let illegal aliens enter, but he's entering Syria illegally. Yeah, it's true. Thank you so much, Janice, for being here, and I hope to meet you again next year when you visit Syria. Will you visit Syria next year?
I can't wait to come back already. So yes, of course, I hope to be back.
Well, thank you so much. Well, guys, I advise you all to follow Janice Kortkamp on Facebook and her social media accounts, because she says the truth about Syria and you can get very educated about all the topics she talks about. And I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye.